Hello everybody and welcome to the Human Echoes recap for Happy Season 1 Episode 5. This one's called White Sauce? Hot Sauce? Messing my intros up with those multiple question marks in the title, guys. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's a question from a food vendor. It's the title of the episode. Anyway, this episode, I want to say, is maybe like the most depressing episode of Happy so far, and keeping in mind that we have seen a baby blow up in a microwave. We have a baby. We didn't actually watch it happen, but the implication was, in our minds, we all saw it, and I think we were all pretty traumatized for it. But there was always like some kind of hope, I felt like, in the other episodes, and there's just the tiniest glimmer of hope in this one, but it's real low, guys. It's a candle, and the wind is blowing, and the flame is going down on the hope level. We start off right where we left off with the last episode, all right? Nick and Mary are looking through the dark room for Haley, trying to figure out what happened, where she went, why they're both there at the same time, and they kind of synchronize their watches, get their story straight. And Nick asks Mary a question that honestly I had not really thought about in the context of this show, and yet it's such a big question to ask. He says to Mary, "Listen, Amanda, looking for our kid, our kid got kidnapped. Why did she come to you and not to me?" And I just, I knew that there was the dynamic that Amanda and Mary hate each other. Okay, I got that. I knew that Amanda and Nick used to be married, but it never hit me until this exact moment, this exact line that's delivered, that their relationship was so broken, and he has just wasted away so much of their emotional capital that his ex-wife would rather, in the case of, at least to him in this moment anyway, would rather in the case of their missing daughter, go to the woman who her ex-husband cheated with. And that is who she's been running around with this whole time. Now, Mary does say, hey, look, she was looking for you. She did come to the precinct trying to figure out where you were. That's what she was aiming for. But I think that's maybe a half-truth. I'm pretty sure, based on what we see later in this episode, that Amanda was almost relieved not to have to work with Nick, and would rather have worked with the person who she may have thought was her worst enemy at one time than Nick on this particular project. Meredith tries to swap this around, and I honestly, this was an interesting subversion. I thought for sure that Nick and Meredith were going to team up, all right? They were going to go after Haley, that there was going to be sort of the cat and mouse of Mary's going to try to turn Nick in, but maybe she's not, maybe she's conflicted. Does Nick know about it? Sort of a drama thing. And Nick figures it out almost instantly. And almost instantly is like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. I'm out. Which I thought was cool. So there's not a lot of Nick and Mary stuff, at least in this episode. I assume that they'll be back together at some point, but they're not teaming up. This is not the intersection of their plot points where they're all together on the same line now, and she's trying to get him to go to Blue. He knows that Blue wants him. He knows that she's working for him, and he's out. Meanwhile, speaking of Blue, he's getting harassed by the reality show producer to sort of embrace the concept. Love this guy. Sort of a late millennial kind of vibe here. He's got his vape pen. All right. He's the producer on a reality TV show. And he comes to Blue essentially with the offer of, hey, listen, why would you want to be a mobster? The money is not as good as what you're going to get as a reality TV show. The risk is going to be much higher. And I think that it's interesting here. Blue doesn't necessarily argue back with him. Blue isn't gonna do this, all right? He does hate the reality TV show, but on a certain point, I think what makes Blue really angry in this moment is that this guy has a point. Like, he is busting his balls and getting crap from the bug people or whatever they are in the weird room, and also, like, just dealing with crazy nutcases like Nick Sachs, and does not have a ton of stuff to show for it except for, I assume, an ulcer, okay? Or something, like some stress-related health problems that he's probably dealing with. This guy, I mean, he has a nice house, but he's really, like, life-wise not doing great. And his reaction to this is not to come back and say, yeah, well, I have, like, all this power or whatever. He just, like, hits this guy where it hurts him the most in his pretty face and smashes the glass ornament. A great moment, I felt like, for his character, and also just showing what kind of a situation he's in. We see a little montage of the henchman from, the creepy guy whose name I've forgotten. I kept waiting for someone to say his name in the subtitles, because I take my notes from the subtitles, and it's been 2 weeks since I took notes, and so I was like, somebody got to talk to this guy who was with the needle, and then he was with Mary's mom. Like, that's got to happen at some point, right? But no, nobody said his name, so I forgot his name, and I didn't look it up because I'm lazy. But he's over there bleaching the whole hideout where Santa was, right? The dark room, coming behind, cleaning everything up. I don't feel like this is, like, from a actual forensic evidence point of view, just drowning the whole thing in bleach. I feel like you would miss something. Like, why not? I guess you can't burn the whole place down, but it seems like there's a more thorough thing than just pouring bleach on stuff. But it was neat to see him just, like, dancing around with a bleach bottle. This character continues to be fascinating to me, and as we go into the episode, more weirdness, and I mean, it's still kind of him, but, like, seeing him in different situations is always a lot of fun. He finds Meredith, figures out what's going on, right? Like, figures out that she was hunting these kids down, and it's not until later in the episode that Nick puts together that this is Blue's thing. But it's just now occurring to me that I don't think Meredith knew that the kidnappings were linked to Blue, and some lights have to be going on in her head as well, that this henchman who works for Blue is here cleaning up this mess of this kidnapping situation that she was sticking her nose in. That's gotta, 2 and 2 putting together. Granted, later on, she just gets the shakedown from IA and she blatantly, like, says, oh, okay, that this is definitely coming down from Blue, but she should have figured it out sooner. Because there's no other reason for this guy to be here if it's not one of Blue's operations, although she did get knocked out. I will say, in Meredith's credit, concussions are not a silly thing, all right? Being hit on the head so hard that your brain turns off is a bad thing, and it's not good for, like, thinking. So maybe we can cut her some slack. And she does, in fact, get knocked out by a creepy guy whose name I've forgotten. In the meantime, Meth Santa delivers the kids to a really nice classroom. Did not see that one coming. I got to admit, like, you guys know what you were expecting. You're sitting there like, this guy's kidnapped, a creepy dude, kidnapped a bunch of kids, has them tied together with a strand of Christmas lights. Like, there's clearly some nefarious goings on, all right? Probably not going to be a fun time for any of these kids. And I don't know. I didn't know at this point. I thought maybe next episode was going to be the last one in the series. I looked it up and there's like 3 or 4 more. So I don't know how close we were to the conclusion when we were watching this, but seeing them walk into a classroom, just like a nicely lit, like a classically furnished classroom, was in total mind screw. Really, really dug that. And they go to look around the classroom, and this was even better in the mind screw department, just because of thinking about, like, the amount of work that would have gone into this. Like, they've stocked this thing with, like, game boxes and stuff, so it looks normal. They've taken all the games out. And not only that, but they've got books in the classroom that have no words in them. Now, the game box thing is not so much work, all right? Somebody go to the store, buy a game, open the box, throw the components away. It's fun to think about. But what gets me going, just from a logistical standpoint of setting up this room, is somebody went to a bookbinder and they said, I need copies of these classic children's books, but I want the pages to be blank. I want you to emulate the covers or whatever of, I don't know, Go Dogs Go, but don't actually put any dogs going anywhere. And nobody has a hat that nobody likes. Okay? It's a Go Dogs Go reference for those of you who don't know about Go Dogs Go. It's a terrible book. Argue My Mother is much better. That was Albert's children's book review portion of the recap. And now moving on to Happy. So they've set this thing up as like a very much like an empty shell. So that it on the outside it looks like a classroom, but very, very much not a classroom. In the meantime, Nick goes to see Amanda. And the great setup here, Happy realizing that Nick is afraid of what is going to happen here, of what Amanda will think of him, of what she'll say, thinking of what he's going to say. That was an interesting look into Nick's vulnerabilities, and I really enjoyed him wrestling with, am I going to push this doorbell or not? And especially the one specific angle of him like going to push the doorbell and like a close-up on his finger and Happy's face like smushed up against the wall, like waiting for it to happen. And it goes about as well as Nick expected. And there was a reason that these two got divorced, okay? And it's not just because, like, he's a bad person, but his downward spiral of, like, drugs and alcohol, like, she knows about all this. She says to him, is this what you've been doing this whole time? And he's essentially got a cop to it, because that is, in fact, what he has been doing this whole time. All right, we've seen him on the drugs, on the alcohol, and the more drugs over and over again, and he's barely able to function well enough to talk to her. Like, he's quoting like lines from their song that they played at their wedding in order to connect to her. And on one hand, like, I'm just thinking about this now. She takes that as a slight, right? She takes that as he can't think of the words to say to me. And he has no, like, he does nothing to say. He's just quoting some song, and isn't that stupid? And it kind of is. On the other hand, especially knowing what we know later about when Amanda finds the ring, it's telling that their wedding day is somewhere in in Nick's mind. That he's thinking about that moment of that is somehow front of at least his subconscious, where it's still defining his interactions with this woman. And I thought that I think that it's interesting to look at it from that perspective, that he's not able to shake this, and it's still a very big part of his life, even if he doesn't want to admit it. Speaking of the classroom, creepy dude is the teacher. I really enjoyed the first of all, there's two things. He plays a videotape for them that he has pre-recorded, probably because he does not have the patience to actually interact with the children. And the second thing, and it's just bonkers. It's a little thing. But while he's playing his VHS tape for them, he takes out of the drawer a corn cob and starts eating corn that apparently had been left in the drawer, I don't know how long for, okay? But we don't see him heat it up, all right? The drawer's not chilled. He's got this corn cob just waiting for him in the drawer of this classroom. It's that kind of insanity that just, like, you don't get that in other shows. I'm making a big deal out of it, and maybe it doesn't deserve to have as big a deal made out of it, but I thought it was great. He also smashes a mouse in front of Haley to get her attention. It just, more like, yeah, definitely this guy's creepy. Nick and Amanda are sorting their stuff out, and I liked that in the middle of their fight, like we cut away to Happy. And Happy is someone who we haven't really gotten to know as a character in the series. I mean, we've got to know him as a character in relation to Nick, right? Like their relationship is what defines the series, but we never hardly ever see Happy go off on his own and try to do something. And to see him wander away from the conversation, to wander away from Nick and Amanda, and to burrow into Haley's pillows and just sort of take in the grief that he's been feeling over this little girl is, I think, kind of a big deal. It takes him out of like sort of just the slap happy imaginary friend kind of crazy hijinks that he is in relation to Nick, and turns him into just a character. Yeah, he has it, like he's innocent, right? He doesn't swear, he doesn't know anything about drugs, like he doesn't know about the world. And for most of the series, that contrast between Nick being like way on this end of the spectrum and Happy being way on this end of the spectrum has been sort of the source of a lot of the humor and the just like the definition of Happy's personality. But here we see him just on his own, and it's not about what Happy doesn't know. It's not about what Happy hasn't seen before. It's not about Happy in the swear jar and, you know, sort of the comic bouncing off of Nick. It's just this person, all right, Pegacorn, but, you know, a person, and his grief for the loss of his best friend. And I think maybe that's why, and later on there's more stuff as well, but this is one of the things that makes this episode so depressing in my mind. Not like, this is so depressing, I don't want to watch this anymore. Okay, we're not dealing with Black Mirror depressing. I don't like Black Mirror, guys. I don't know why you guys watch that show. I mean, it's good. It's just like, it just make you feel bad all the time. I don't know why, I don't want to feel bad all the time. I want to feel good sometime. Feel good. Anyway, this is a little bit of a feel bad episode, and to like ratchet up the feel bad, okay, but put a little feel good in here. I got to write these words down, and I do want to read the words that I wrote down. It makes me so happy that I typed them out on my note-taking device, and they were typed out, and now I get to say them out loud. Ninja lumberjacks invade. Just like dudes with axes bust into Amanda's house, and they're gonna take out Nick. I assume these guys are from Blue. I don't know exactly how he knew where Nick was going, but maybe he got it from Mary, or just had him tailed at some point. Now I'm actually curious how he would have known. Regardless, we got some fancy violence going on. Another one of these really brutal fight scenes. A very, very competent fighter, Nick, and not incompetent fighter, Amanda, as we find out. Nick takes out 2 of the ninja lumberjacks. Amanda gets the 3rd one with, like, kitchen implements and stuff. And I liked that it wasn't, like, a weird, like, political statement where she saves Nick's life. Not that that's a bad thing. That's fun to invert those tropes as well. But it wasn't saying, like, she doesn't need anybody. Like, probably if the 3 guys had attacked her by themselves, like, she wouldn't have been able to take him. And probably if the 3 had attacked Nick, at least in the way that we saw them attack him, he wouldn't have been able to take them. But together, these guys work and commit violence against these lumberjacks. And I do also, I really wanted to dwell on this moment. Happy's, as I mentioned, grieving in Haley's room. And the fight comes to this room, this like last sanctuary of this memory of this little girl, and we see Nick's violence invade this sort of space of innocence. And we've seen that kind of, right, in episode 2 or 3 when Nick has Happy help him cheat and doing drugs and all kinds of stuff. Like, we saw that corruption of his girl's ideals in a sort of abstract way there. Here we're physically seeing the room, this actual physical place that his daughter had stayed in and that she had built up, right? That with her memories and her toys and, all of her happiness. And it's just being torn apart and defiled because Nick has come back into her life. And what just a terrible influence he is on everything that she's doing. I thought that was a really fascinating way to cover this, to show what kind of influence Nick is, and to hear Happy, calling out, like, please don't do this, please don't tear this place apart. It's like the last thing that's left of her for me. It's just such a bummer. It's a real downer. I mean, it's cool to see Nick dispatching these ninjas, but to do it with Haley's ballet trophy, and I do love that they got a little humor in at the end where he looks at it after it's covered in blood from this guy that he's stabbed to death with the ballet trophy, and he's like, oh, first place. That's great stuff. Do not get me wrong, but it really, like, overall, this scene just, like, I don't think Nick's ever going to be able to be a dad. I don't know. I mean, we've still got some more episodes, and maybe, like, we'll see him redeem himself somehow, but seeing what happens here, it's like, this guy cannot be a part of this little girl's life. He will ruin it. It will happen. And I don't know how we rectify that. I don't know where we go. I'm fully expecting to see Nick find Haley at the end, right? And maybe she's safe, but I don't expect to see him just become a part of her life. That seems somewhat unlikely to me. Mary wakes up on her dad's grave with cat whiskers drawn on. Subtle. Really great move by creepy guy. And is almost immediately taken down to the police station to talk to Internal Affairs, who essentially deliver the message to Mary that you are not supposed to be working on missing children, and there are people high up who we work for that will hurt you if you keep working on missing children. And their name is Blue. I mean, they don't say that, all right? But I do love that in a show that's essentially about completely corrupt cops, that somehow they've still managed to make Internal Affairs be the bad guys. Like, these cops do probably need some oversight. Okay, I don't think that oversight of cops in this particular universe is a bad idea, having seen what we've seen of them. But somehow, no, IA is even worse than the regular cops. And this is where Amanda properly puts together that Blue's behind all this. We get to Haley back in the classroom. She has sort of a flashback to the Santa character, doesn't want to eat the cake. Nothing really bad comes of this, although I do enjoy the fact that there's a shot here that I thought was really well composed. It's close in on her, and it never cuts away. And one of the kids leans out from behind her and says, "Happy and your dad aren't coming." All right? And the other kid, the fat one who didn't get the cake, reaches over and steals the cake off of her desk. And that's kind of funny, but I also thought it was really an interesting, to me anyway, it suggests that Haley is now going to have to be in competition, if not directly like fighting against these other kids. That they are going to now be a danger to her, as well as all the other stuff that's a danger to her. Possibly. Maybe not, but I just thought that, like, the fact that they're stealing her food, even though she didn't want it, okay, that's fine. And now they're tearing her down and saying Happy and her dad aren't coming. Like, the way those two things were framed, I thought really suggested that something pretty bad is going to be going on between her and them. Happy and Nick, they leave Amanda's place. They're wandering around trying to figure out what their next move should be. Nick doesn't have a next move. And Happy tries to convince him that people's truest selves are good and cheerful and full of Christmas all the year round. And then the power goes out and the train is going to be delayed. And Nick says to Happy, now go look at all those people and see what their truest selves were. And Nick is vindicated in his view that people are going to be terrible when they're in bad circumstances. All right. He sends Happy on the circuit, right? The daughter had stolen the toy. The girl was cheating on the guy. The businessman didn't want to pay his taxes. Like, all of these things come out of this. And Nick falls down onto the train tracks and just lays down to die. And Happy tries to, like, shake him out of it, to say, hey, listen, Haley still needs us. Like, whatever the world is that you think, maybe I'm wrong, but, like, this has got to be okay. And Nick eventually convinces Happy just to go. And there's a moment in this scene where Happy says something to Nick. He talks about deciding to become an imaginary friend and why he did that. He says, I decided to do this job because of some pain in my life. And I hope that we're going to get some information about what this world of imaginary friends is. I read the synopsis for the next episode, and I think that is going to happen, but I don't think it's just something that Haley conjured up out of her mind. It seems like that this is some kind of metaphysical entity that already existed and allowed itself to be shaped by this human child into an imaginary friend, possibly because of some trauma that it went through in the past. I would love to see the flashback to what Happy went through. I don't know how that's going to happen, but that's going to be interesting stuff. Happy disappears. Nick decides he doesn't want to die anymore. When I first watched this, I thought that this was Nick, like, just tricking Happy to go away, but I don't know exactly. The way it played, Happy disappears. All right, Nick immediately just gets up and gets off the track. I didn't know if, like, he had some kind of plan or if he just changed his mind after Happy was gone or what the deal was there, but I still don't know exactly. I was not fully able to parse this. But what I did like about this is that after he gets up, right, he decides he wants to live. He tries to climb out of the train track, and he has a heart attack as the train is approaching. And the people do help him out of the gutter that he has thrown himself into. Yes, he did have to try to help himself out first. All right, they did not sacrifice all of the stuff in their, in their busy lives to help this guy out, but they do act in non-self-interest ways. They're doing something good for this other person, and the fact that Happy turns out to be kind of right in the end, I love that both of these characters kind of have a point. That Happy thinks people have goodness in their hearts, and to a certain extent they do, and Nick thinks that everybody's rotten in the inside, really, when you drill down to it, and to a certain extent they are. And the show is willing to show both points of view and not, like, take a side. It's not crushingly cynical, but it's also not like, everybody's great and there's good in all of us, yay! It finds the middle ground there, and that's what's really, really powerful. There's the special sauce scene, which I won't... That's still a thing. They're still looking for the... Special sauce, guys. If you watch the show, you know what they were talking about. Like, moving on. Nick is walking around. He's got nowhere left to go. Happy has left him. He thinks that he's dead. He's not dead, guys. The show's called Happy. Happy not gonna die. Not in this episode, anyway. He thinks that he's killed Happy here, and he's about ready to give up. I mean, Nick doesn't have anywhere else to turn. At this point, he doesn't know where the kids are. He doesn't know who took them. He's got Blue after him. He's got no money. We saw him, like, turn his pockets inside out, and they were completely empty. And he's got nothing left, but he happens to hear this, just the faintest whiff of a jingle of Blue Christmas. And from that, and I'm gonna call a little bit of shenanigans on this because it's kind of not realistic, but I'll give it a pass anyway. That jogs his memory enough that he remembers that at some point he worked with Meth Santa, not dressed up as Meth Santa, but puts the face together with the guy that he fought in the alleyway with the giant candy cane, and realizes Blue's involved in this. This is Blue's deal. Blue has my daughter. Now I have a mission. Now I know what I'm doing and where I'm going and what is gonna be. And we're barreling like a train towards the finale. Not next week, as I mentioned, we've got like 3 or 4 left, but now that Nick knows that Blue is involved, I'm very excited to see where that particular thread goes. Seeing where Happy comes from and like what his deal is, that's a little bit of a spoiler, but we know that he comes back in the last episode, and having read the synopsis, like the fact that we're delving more into his character and his background and sort of what he is and what makes him tick. I need that. I need that in my life right now. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this recap, because that is it. That is all the things that I have to say. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, hit that like and subscribe button for more just like this and a lot of other cool content as well. I'm Albert. You guys take care, and I'll see you next week.